At 13, I woke up to silence. No footsteps, no breakfast, just a note on the counter that read, "We can't do this anymore." My parents were gone. No goodbye. No warning. Just gone. 15 years later they came back. Not with apologies but with lawyers. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted my inheritance. What they didn't know was that I had become everything they feared. Powerful, prepared, and absolutely unforgiving. This is the story of how the girl they abandoned became the woman they couldn't control. My name is Madeline Carter, and this is how it started. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment on the south side of Milwaukee. My dad ran a used car lot with a giant inflatable gorilla on the roof. My mom ran a daycare out of our living room. From the outside, we looked like a working-class family just trying to get by. But inside, things were unraveling. Dad spent more time at the casino than at the lot. Mom stopped opening the blinds. Dinner became cereal, and promises became currency. I kept my grades up, cleaned without being asked, and wore the same sneakers until the soles gave out. I thought if I was perfect enough, they'd notice. They didn't. Then came that Tuesday morning. I woke up late. No one shook me for school. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Their bedroom door was open. Half the closet empty. Drawers ransacked. On the counter, a note in my mother's handwriting. "Madeline, we can't do this anymore. Uncle Henry will take care of you. We're sorry." 16 words. That was it. Called their phones. Disconnected. I searched the apartment for clues. Nothing. Just me, the note, and the sound of my own breathing. That night, I sat on the couch staring at the phone like it owed me an explanation. Day 2, the landlord came knocking. I told him my parents were gone. He muttered something about social services and walked away. That's when the fear set in. Day 3, I called my school counselor. She didn't waste time. Within hours, Child Protective Services showed up. Mr. Barrett, the social worker, spoke gently, like he was trying not to shatter me. He said they'd found my father's brother, Uncle Henry. I barely knew him. My parents called him uptight, cold, obsessed with his architecture firm in Chicago. He never married. No kids. But he answered the phone when CPS called. The next morning he arrived. Black SUV. Tailored suit. Silver cufflinks. He looked like he belonged in a courtroom, not my kitchen. He scanned the apartment, then said, "Pack what you can carry. The rest can be shipped." No hugs. No small talk. Just orders. That's how my childhood ended. Not with a scream, but with a suitcase. I packed clothes, a few books, and a photo of me and my mom at the park. Everything else stayed behind. "CPS will handle it," Henry said. On the drive to Chicago, he barely spoke. Every few miles, he'd glance in the mirror and ask if I was hungry or needed the restroom. I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe comfort. Instead, it felt like I'd been drafted into a military program. When we arrived, I realized house wasn't the right word. It was a Victorian mansion behind iron gates, with manicured lawns and stone lions guarding the entrance. I stepped out of the car in my hoodie and sneakers, feeling like I'd landed on another planet. Henry walked in, inspected the place, and said, "Don't touch the curtains with dirty hands. Breakfast is at 7 a.m. That's all." That night I didn't cry. I was too wired. I stared at the carved ceiling, wondering if I'd be sent away again if I broke a rule. The rules came fast. Shoes off in the house. Homework at a desk. 1 hour of piano practice daily. Even though I had no talent, I broke every rule in the first month. Not out of rebellion, but because I wasn't used to structure. One morning I walked into the kitchen at 8. The stove was cold. Henry was reading the paper. "Kitchen closes at 7:30, he said without looking up. No yelling. No guilt trips. Just penalties. He didn't operate on emotion. He was more CEO than uncle. If I missed homework, weekend plans were cancelled. If I broke a rule, privileges were revoked. But every punishment had an end. And when it ended, life resumed. 2 weeks in, I was crying quietly over a photo of my parents' wedding. Henry walked in, saw me wiping my tears and said nothing. He handed me a handkerchief, sat on the edge of the bed and waited. No advice, no pity, just presence. Strangely, that meant more than any apology. Chicago was colder than Milwaukee, not just in temperature but in tone. Uncle Henry's mansion was pristine, intimidating and silent. The walls were lined with antique clocks that ticked in perfect rhythm, as if mocking my disoriented heartbeat. I didn't know where to sit, what to touch, or how to exist in a place that felt more like a museum than a home. Henry didn't offer comfort. He offered rules. Breakfast at 7. Homework at a desk. Shoes off at the door. Piano practice daily. I didn't know how to play piano, but that didn't matter. Discipline isn't about talent, he said. It's about consistency. I failed every rule in the first month. Not because I was rebellious, but because I was broken. I'd lived in chaos. I didn't know how to live in order. I left my shoes on. I missed breakfast. I forgot piano. Each mistake came with a consequence. No yelling, no guilt trips, just revoked privileges. But Henry never threatened to send me away. That was the difference. He punished, but he stayed. One night, I was staring at a photo of my parents. I didn't hear him enter. He saw the tears I tried to hide and said nothing. He handed me a handkerchief, sat beside me and waited. No speech. No advice. Just presence. That was the first time I felt safe. Weekends were business school. Henry took me to meetings. Watch how they talk, he whispered. Who speaks first? Who blinks? Who folds? I was 14, learning negotiation before I mastered algebra. He was relentless. I was grounded for saying cool instead of effective in an essay. He made me rewrite it 3 times. When I rolled my eyes, he raised one brow and said, "Be careful, Madeline. The world doesn't bend for your irritation." But beneath the sarcasm was steel. He didn't disappear when things got hard. He didn't flinch when I tested him. He stayed. I started to change. Slowly. I stopped waiting for comfort and started chasing competence. I learned to polish my shoes, set alarms, and keep my promises. Not because I feared punishment, but because I feared being disposable again. Henry checked my grades and scoffed. Public school won't cut it. Before I knew it, I was enrolled at Westfield Academy, a private school where kids discussed summer homes and etiquette drills were part of lunch. I was drowning. Geometry proofs, Latin verbs, social codes. I cried at dinner one night. Henry didn't flinch. He said, "Your circumstances changed without your consent. Your response is your choice. I don't invest in lost causes." Stung. But it worked. Hired a tutor. Built study groups. By junior year I was on the honor roll. Henry didn't say, "Good job." He left a leather briefcase on my bed. "You'll need this," he said. That was his version of pride. I used to think he was controlling, but I realized he was training me. He wanted me sharp, organized, and ready to operate at his level. Teachers noticed. Classmates asked for my notes. I wasn't just surviving. I was evolving. Westfield Academy was brutal. The students were polished, the curriculum relentless, and the expectations sky high. I was the girl who didn't know which fork to use at dinner, surrounded by kids who vacationed in Tuscany and debated philosophy over lunch. Felt like an imposter. But Henry didn't care about my discomfort. He cared about results. When I came home crying over geometry, he didn't offer comfort. He laid down his fork and said, "Your circumstances changed without your consent. Your response is your choice. I don't invest in lost causes." It was harsh, but it worked. I stopped waiting for sympathy and started building systems. I used my allowance to hire a peer tutor. I formed study groups. I learned how to take notes like a machine. By junior year I was on the honor roll. Henry noticed. He didn't say, "Well done." He left a new leather briefcase on my bed. "You'll need this," he said. That was his version of pride. At home the rules never softened. If I missed a deadline I lost privileges. If I rolled my eyes, He raised a brow and reminded me that irritation was not a strategy. But beneath the discipline was something rare. Consistency. Henry didn't disappear when I failed. He stayed. Weekends became masterclasses. He took me to vendor meetings, design reviews, and strategy sessions. "Watch who speaks first," he whispered. "Who folds? Who controls the silence?" I learned to read rooms before I could drive. I learned to negotiate before I could vote. By the time college applications rolled around, I had a plan. State University. Familiar, affordable, and filled with friends. Henry had other ideas. He dropped a stack of Ivy League brochures on my desk. "Apply to these." Snap. "Why do you care where I go? It's my life, not your project." He didn't flinch. "Your friends are thinking about social lives. I'm thinking about your future. You have potential. Don't waste it hiding in your comfort zone." Shouted. "I never asked to be your project." He replied, cold and sharp. "And I never asked to be your guardian. Yet here we are. I'm giving you opportunities your parents never had. You're welcome." That hit me like a brick. Not because he was wrong, but because it was the first time he acknowledged the truth. Neither of us chose this. But we were in it. And in his own way, he was trying to break the cycle. Later that night, he opened up. He told me my father was a gifted mathematician who never went to college. That he worked at a gas station while Henry got the scholarship. That he resented Henry for years. "My mother was smart too," he said. "But her prospects dried up. I won't let that happen to you." That changed everything. I applied to 7 schools. Got into 5. I chose Northwestern. Prestigious but not suffocating. When the acceptance letter arrived, Henry didn't smile. He handed me a pen. "Sign it. Tuition's covered." No drama. Just action. By the time I packed for college, I was no longer the girl with a suitcase and a hoodie. I was sharp, strategic, and maybe more like Henry than I wanted to admit. Northwestern was tough, but compared to Henry's house, it was manageable. I knew how to wake up early, manage my time, and outwork everyone. While others missed class from partying, I showed up with a briefcase and a plan. I joined clubs, led projects, discovered a talent for design and marketing strategy. Henry's lessons paid off. I could read a room, spot a lie, and use silence like a weapon. Presentations felt like negotiations. Professors noticed. Henry didn't soften while I was gone, but the distance changed us. Our calls became less formal. He cracked jokes. When I complained about dining whole food, he said, "Good. Consider it training for the real world. Everything tastes bland if you're doing it right." Every summer I worked at Whitaker Home Designs. Henry rotated me through departments: inventory, vendor relations, marketing. He wasn't just giving me experience. He was testing me. By graduation, I knew the company inside and out. I moved back into the mansion, not as a lost child, but as the new marketing director. We had a rhythm. Sometimes we ate together. Sometimes we passed each other with nods. It was strict, but it was home. Over the next 6 years, I climbed. Assistant director. Then head of marketing. We launched new store formats, revamped vendor contracts, and built a thriving e-commerce engine. I was 27, confident, capable, and finally in control. Then Henry sat me down one night. His voice was quiet. His posture stiff. "Leukemia," he said. "Advanced. Treatments will buy time. Not fix it." Hit me like a truck. But Henry didn't want sympathy. He treated it like a business problem. "We all die," he said. "The only variables are when and how we use the time before." From that moment, our roles reversed. I managed his meds, his appointments, his meals. He rolled his eyes but never resisted. He knew I was running things his way, direct and disciplined. At work, he handed me the reins. First small projects, then full decisions. He didn't hover. If I made a mistake, he pointed it out with sarcasm and let me fix it. Staff stopped seeing me as the kid. They came to me first. Henry made it clear. I wasn't a placeholder. I was the future. The illness stripped some of his armor. Not all. Even hooked to IVs, he threw out snarky lines. But in quiet moments, he showed a side I'd never seen. One night I helped him into bed. He gripped my wrist and said, "You were the daughter I never allowed myself to have." I didn't speak. I just nodded. Words would have ruined it. 8 months later he was gone. Peacefully. Quietly. The funeral was small. Business partners. Few distant relatives. Staff who respected him. I stood at his grave, knowing the man my parents called cold and arrogant was the only one who showed up, and the only one who built me into someone who could stand alone. 3 weeks after Henry's funeral, I was back in the mansion. Quiet halls. Empty chair at the head of the table. I kept the business running like he taught me. Sharp, disciplined, no half-effort. Then the letter arrived. Caldwell, Henry's attorney, called me downtown for the will reading. I expected a few business partners, maybe a charity. I didn't expect them. My parents. I hadn't seen them in 15 years. They walked into the marble lobby like they owned it. My mother wore pearls and a blazer that screamed outlet store ambition. My father's suit was too tight. His jaw clenched like he was closing a deal. They froze when they saw me. "Madeline," my mother gasped. "Look at you, honey." My father nodded. "You've grown." Leaned back. "Yeah. That tends to happen when you feed a kid instead of tossing her out with a trash bag." The secretary blinked. Caldwell ushered us into the conference room. Long table, legal documents stacked like dominoes, and him at the head, adjusting his glasses like he was defusing a bomb. "Thank you for coming," he said. "We're here to read Henry Carter's last will and testament." My mother raised her hand like she was in school. "Before you start, we're Madeline's parents. Henry may have stepped in, but obviously family has rights." Smirk. "You remembered that 15 years later or just today?" Caldwell ignored the jab and opened the folder. Henry Carter leaves the following to his legal ward, Madeline Carter. Primary residence valued at $2.1 million, cash savings of $2.5 million, and 70% ownership of Carter and Company. Interiors valued at approximately $48 million. The words hung in the air like smoke. My parents blinked, stunned. My mother whispered, That's everything." Caldwell nodded. "Correct. The estate passes entirely to Madeline." My father lunged forward. "This is outrageous. Henry manipulated her. We should be co-managers. She's young. She needs guidance." I laughed. "Guidance? You two couldn't guide me to a bus stop." Caldwell raised his hands. "Mr. Carter's wishes are explicit. You may contest, but I'll warn you. This document is airtight." My mother leaned in, tears shimmering. "We're not contesting. We just want to help. Madeline, honey, paperwork like this is confusing. You shouldn't have to handle all this pressure alone. Let us manage it for you. Just until you're settled." I stared at her. "You kicked me out at 13. I think I can handle a deed." My father muttered. "Ungrateful." Caldwell stacked the papers. "We'll reconvene later this week to finalize signatures. Let's adjourn." They followed me out, scrambling to keep up. "Madeline, wait," my mother said. "Can we talk? Just dinner. Please." Normally I'd say no. But curiosity, and maybe a sick sense of humor, made me nod. We met at a mid-range Italian place near my home. They were already seated, menus untouched, faces rehearsed. "We made mistakes," my mother began. "Your father had gambling issues." I was depressed. "We weren't ourselves." I stirred my drink. "You don't say. I thought kicking your kid out was just a new parenting trend." They giggled awkwardly. Then came the pitch. "We need help," my father said. "We're in debt. Your mother's medical bills." She cut him off. "If you could spare 100,000. Just to get us stable." I laughed so loud the waiter looked over. 100 grand. That's your opener. Not even a warm-up. Just straight to 6 figures. My father flushed. "You have millions. Don't act like this is difficult." Leaned back. Correction. Have millions. You have pasta you haven't ordered yet. My mother's voice sharpened. We're your parents. We deserve consideration. Shrug. You deserved it 15 years ago. You didn't want it then. Dinner ended quickly. They made another appeal. I told them to get jobs. My father muttered something about ungrateful children destroying family legacies. My mother dabbed her eyes like she was auditioning for pity. I walked out lighter. Not because I saw them again, but because I knew nothing had changed. Same entitlement. Same games. The only difference was that I had the upper hand. A week later, I was back in Caldwell's office. This time they brought a lawyer. A man in a wrinkled gray suit who looked like he got lost on his way to traffic court. They strutted in like royalty. Ready to correct this little misunderstanding, my father said, dropping his briefcase like he was buying the building. Misunderstanding? Yes. Yeah, must have slipped Henry's mind when he raised me for 15 years and you didn't. My mother smiled. Madeline, honey, we're not here to fight. We just don't want you to drown in responsibilities you don't understand. Company worth millions, properties, assets. This isn't a toy box. I slumped back. You're right. It's not. That's why Henry trained me while you pretended I didn't exist. Caldwell cleared his throat and handed over a binder. Before we continue, a few clarifications, he said. Their lawyer puffed up. We're prepared to challenge the will. These parents were clearly cut out unfairly. This girl was manipulated. I grinned. Love when I get downgraded. Makes me feel like a gladiator about to crush someone. Caldwell didn't blink. He opened the binder. First, Madeline was not just Henry's ward. At 16, he legally adopted her. Here are the court documents. Their lawyer froze. My mother's mouth fell open. That's impossible. Caldwell slid the papers closer. Not impossible. Legal fact. Which means, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, you have no standing in this estate. My father flushed. We're her biological parents. Shrugged. Congrats. Biology makes you donors. Not parents. Caldwell continued. Second, Henry anticipated this. He hired private investigators. We have records of repeated attempts you made to extort money. Phone logs, bank transfers, emails. It's all here. Their lawyer shuffled papers like he wanted to disappear. Third, Caldwell said, Henry left a personal letter. I'll read it now. He opened the page. Madeline, if they've shown up, I told you they would. They won't change. They'll circle back when they smell money. Don't let them take what you've earned. If they try, this letter is your shield. Remember, family isn't who brings you into the world. It's who shows up when the world walks out. Silence. Then Caldwell dropped the final hammer. And lastly, the nuclear clause. If anyone contests this will, all assets, house, savings, company stake, transfer to charity. Specifically, the Children's Cancer Foundation. Only legal heirs can trigger it. Outsiders cannot. Mr. and Mrs. Carter have no standing. I laughed. So go ahead. Sue. The only thing you'll win is a donation drive. My mother slammed her hand on the table. This is theft. You can't steal our daughter and our inheritance. I leaned in. Funny. Last time I checked, you already threw your daughter out. Now you're just mad someone better took your spot. My father snarled. You'll regret this. Smiled. No, I won't. But you might regret not investing in a mirror. My mother hissed. You little brat. After everything we gave you. I raised a brow. Like what? The night you dumped me on a sidewalk. Or the years of silence after. They tried every guilt trip in the book. We're your true family. You'll understand loyalty when you're older. Henry brainwashed you. It was pathetic. They sounded like kids caught stealing cookies. Caldwell waved in security. That will be all. Please escort Mr. and Mrs. Carter out. They protested. Demanded to speak to someone higher up. But Caldwell closed his binder. Meeting is over. Watching them get marched out of that glass tower, screaming and writhing while the lobby stared, That was the kind of satisfaction money couldn't buy. After the confrontation, I didn't wait for their next stunt. I drove straight to the courthouse and filed for a temporary restraining order. The judge signed it that afternoon. That night, a process server handed them the documents. I emailed the case number to the local police to ensure it was on file. I expected a week of silence. Got 48 hours. My driveway camera caught their rental car creeping in after dark. Headlights dimmed, as if stealth mode came free with a reservation. I watched from my phone as they circled the gate like vultures. I didn't flinch. Called the police. They were gone within minutes. That was the last time they tried to show up in person. But they didn't disappear. People like them don't absorb no. They interpret it as try again louder. They sent letters, emails, even tried contacting employees. I blocked every channel. I wasn't just protecting my business. I was protecting my peace. Henry had taught me that action matters more than words. So I honored him by running Carter & Company the way he built it. Sharp, disciplined, and unapologetically excellent. We expanded into 4 new states. Launched a luxury line. Partnered with boutique hotels. I became the face of the brand. Not because I wanted fame but because I wanted legacy. Kept his office untouched. His chair. His desk. His sarcastic notes scribbled in the margins of old reports. Sometimes I'd walk in, sit down, and imagine what he'd say about a new campaign or vendor pitch. "You're overthinking it," I'd hear in my head. "Trust the numbers. And stop using adjectives like exciting. They're lazy." I smiled every time. Years passed. The mansion no longer felt empty. It felt earned. I started mentoring young women, especially those who'd been discarded, underestimated, or told they were too emotional to lead. I taught them what Henry taught me. Discipline, strategy, and silence as a weapon. I didn't tell them to be cold. I told them to be clear. I didn't tell them to be ruthless. I told them to be ready. And I didn't tell them to seek revenge. I told them to build something so strong, the people who hurt them would have to watch from the sidelines. That's what I did. I built a life that couldn't be stolen. A legacy that couldn't be rewritten. And a version of myself that couldn't be erased. So if you've ever been abandoned, underestimated, or told you weren't enough, remember this. You are not disposable. You are not broken. And you are not done. If this story moved you, share it. If it reminded you of your own strength, subscribe. And if you've ever had to rebuild yourself from scratch, drop a comment below. I read every single one. Because this isn't just my story. It's ours.